Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 60, August 21st, 2021. Jay, what is going on?
What's up? Beautiful day outside. A little bit of fall camp to talk about today. Some good news, some news, but everything's going good. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're inching closer to football season, man. We're
It's almost
we're
here.
gonna have it. We're gonna have a little discussion about it today, but yeah, next week we're hoping to have the big preseason preview blowout show, and our one of our favorites to do this. One of our favorite shows to do, and it's really looking forward to that. We should have some good content, some good special guests and surprises and
Yeah.
twists and turns and all kinds of stuff on it. So, well, man, let's get into it. Where do you want to start today?
Let's get into a cup of coffee. Let's talk a little bit of recruiting right now. Some recruiting news. Brennan Thompson, four-star player out of Spearman, way up in the Panhandle, about as far north as you can get without being into Oklahoma there. He has narrowed his choice down to three schools, down between Texas A&M, and Oklahoma State. This guy is just an absolute burner. Ran a 10.32 100 meters as a sophomore, and followed that up as a junior with a 10.37 100 and a 21.27 200 as a junior. That's fast. The guy can burn, and he's not just a burner though. He's a great athlete that profiles at a couple of different positions. Can play really. He's just an athlete. One of those guys that you want to get on campus and mold. So it's interesting to see how some of these are starting to play out as the types of athletes that Sarkisian is really focusing on, and some of the ones that he might be saying, you know what, maybe we're not, even though there was some interest before, maybe you're not the right fit for what we're doing. But Sarkisian has been preaching speed since he got on campus, and he's backing it up right now by going after Thompson. So how are you feeling about this one?
Well, I mean, the final three is interesting. I think, Oklahoma State might be a little bit of a surprise in there, given. I mean, I don't know. Do you happen to know if Oklahoma was involved in this recruitment at all, or if it's just there was no interest in OU, or?
I don't think there was a ton from interest from Oklahoma. However, there was some from Clemson and a little bit from Alabama. So when you start to get those, that's cooled down considerably. But when you're in that conversation with those names, I think you're going after the right players here. The fact that Stillwater is 4 hours from Spearman up there in the Panhandle,
Yeah,
that to me might play a little bit of a part in this. But I also think that these players are going to start taking into consideration these possible immediate conference moves. And that hopefully Coach Sarkisian can start to take advantage of those sort of that sort of talk. But no, yeah, it's good to be, especially and whatever we say about Texas A&M, they're on the cusp, man, of whether or not they can get over that Alabama hump is another question. But Texas A&M and what they have over there with Jimbo Fisher, when you go get the elite coach, and then it starts to turn your program into an elite program. I don't like to say all these kinds words about A&M all the time, but it's true. It is what it is, man. The trajectory of that program has changed, and it is a good thing to be in a conversation with these recruits when A&M is in the conversation as well. So, yeah, but this is just an interesting. He's one of those receivers that Sarkisian has shown. You don't have to have 6'4", 225 guys to be successful in this offense that he's going to run. And this guy's 5'10", 170, soaking wet probably. But again, burner.
yeah, and especially with our discussion about Xavier Worthy and the kind of player that he is, you're starting to see that kind of type. I mean, you can't have enough of those kind of players in today's age in college football. So you saw what he did with Alabama. We keep bringing that up about what Sark did with the receivers there. The slight of size, Devontae Smith winning the Heisman Trophy. Like, if anybody can mold those kind of players, or at least develop a system to where they can succeed at Sark. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's a good point, the geography aspect about, you know, super small town up there in the way north of the Panhandle. Oklahoma State is in, you know, more proximity to him than Texas and A&M are. That's why I was curious about Oklahoma, because that's kind of that region there where OU can pull some of those recruits out of. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. And yeah, on A&M, I think we'll definitely be discussing them quite a bit next week with our preview show, talking more about the, you know, getting into kind of the national scene, because they're up there, and that's where, you know, they're going to be in the in the discussions this year. But we'll be getting into them. And yeah, this is going to be an interesting one to watch. And I think, last thing on Thompson, do we know if he's got a commitment timeline right now, or?
I haven't read anything where
Okay.
he's, you know, itching to make a thing. Obviously, narrowing it down to a top 3, because a lot of these
Yeah.
recruits will go from a top 27 to a top 18 to a top 11 to a top 8 to a top. The fact that he's already narrowed it down to 3 at this point, it makes me feel like that he's close to making his mind up. But again, it's going to come down to, and this is something that you and I have discussed, it's something that Longhorn insider Michael Holland has discussed, getting on the field and getting these games played and sort of seeing what this
Right.
product is going to look like. And that's either going to make or break some of these guys that are coming on now in this 2022 class, or at least entertaining coming on into this 2022 class. And I think that we're going to see the way that when people see the way that he puts receivers, Sarkisian, I should say, puts people into position to be successful on this campus on the offensive side of the ball, that these sort of top 3s are going to really narrow down real quick. And you're either going to want to be here or you're not. And,
right.
And it's going to be definitely interesting to follow the timeline on some of these recruits.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure he's probably got it planned out to get on to these different campuses to see a game. And also,
Right.
like, we keep talking about Xavier Worthy and kind of the system that Sark wants to run, but you just nailed it. Like, you can only tell a recruit so much about what kind of system you're going to run and how it's going to look before they have to see it. And, you know, just like we're talking about, like, we're projecting all these things from what he's done at previous stops and the
Mhm.
profile of some of these players. Like, until we actually see it and know that that's what's going to happen. Yeah. And that's why I think it's smart for recruits to kind of, especially with a new coach and a new system and all that stuff. So yeah, It's going to be interesting to watch it play out. Well, man, let's get into some more Longhorn football talk here. Well, we had scrimmage last week. We discussed a little bit about that. And then this week we had an open practice, and Longhorn insider Mike Holland, who will be joining us for the preview show next week, was there. And according to what he passed along to us, how back is Texas this week?
I'd say Texas is a little bit more back, a little bit farther back now than they were at this point last week, inching towards really being back. But seriously, some good news. Again, some good news coming out of camp. Some people starting to separate themselves a little bit, and some things are becoming a little bit clearer for us. So let's dive into this. One of the things that I wanted to talk about immediately, even though it might not necessarily affect the depth chart immediately, I guess, this season, is word out of camp is that Juan Davis is catching absolutely everything. Juan Davis, the tight end, and has the look to be an absolute stud. And when you think about that tight end room, and this is something that we spent more time last week than I'd realized after I went back and listened to the show, we spent quite a bit of time discussing tight ends, and we didn't necessarily spend a lot of time talking about Juan Davis. And he just seems to be that kind of guy that is going to force his way onto the field, because you can't keep that sort of talent off. And when you have a tight end room that already has Cade Brewer, Jared Wiley, Lee Brock, Helm, like, it's stacked to the point where you're gonna struggle to get all of these guys playing time.
You hadn't even mentioned Jatavion Sanders too. Like,
Sanders
in that is
right.
Sanders in that mix as well. Like, it is an absolutely stacked position unit.
But to hear that Davis was really showing out, has really shown out in practice, and then when Mike reports back to us and says, no, it's legit. It reinforces that even more at a position that Texas fans will readily admit has not been a strong point in a while.
Since when?
Period. Yeah, I mean,
Jermichael Finley?
Probably.
I mean,
what is that? 13 years ago? How long ago was Finley? It's been over a decade, obviously.
God. Yeah, was it first couple of years of Colt, right? 07, 08, something like that. No,
07, 08. I don't
07,
know,
I think.
man. Either way, it's been that long. We're having to think that hard on how long it's been since the tight end position's been relevant on the 40 acres. And just seeing and hearing the type of things that are coming out about the tight ends right now, with a coach like Steve Sarkisian that's known for plugging the right guys in at the right time, it sort of raises the bar, I feel like, for what my expectations will be for this position this season.
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback off that into kind of discussion about what was, what the wide receivers look like in practice, where we'll get to Omeri in a second with kind of, again, getting dinged up a little bit. This is, hopefully this is not going to be the story of his career at Texas, but we'll touch on that a little bit more. But like, that maybe the wide receivers aren't looking like, and also Xavier Worthy wasn't participating in the practice as well. So the people that attended didn't get a chance to see what he looked like on the field, but that the wide receiver unit doesn't look like it's really, I don't know how to describe this without making it sound like, like maybe not, I don't want to say not living up to the like expectations, because I don't know if there were really huge expectations for this wide receiver unit, but
right.
Connecting that with the tight ends, you kind of think a little bit about, like, we already know Sark's going to lean on the running backs. Bijan, that whole running back unit, they're going to get a lot of work. Sark's going to be dealing with either a, redshirt freshman quarterback with Card, or, a guy that's been on campus for a while, but has never, hasn't started a game with Thompson. So it's going to be run heavy. You don't want to ask too much of your quarterbacks. And what better way to help out than having a tight end unit like this into that short intermediate passing game, but also guys that are pretty explosive and can make big plays. And I just wonder how much of this offense, as much as we want to see big explosive plays downfield with speedy wide receivers and getting the ball downfield, how much of this offense is going to be based on the run game and like a short intermediate passing game with these tight ends? I mean, how are you going to keep some of these guys off the field from that tight end unit? We're talking about Wiley. We're talking about, a slimmed down and improved Brewer. But that's before even getting into, Juan Davis, Sanders, Helm, Liebrock, all these guys. Like, how much are we going to have to, like, is Texas going to have to rely on this wide receiver unit to be, packed full of big plays at this point?
When you see, I think a lot's going to play a part on the health of Jordan Whittington and Xavier Worthy, because the motion that will be used, the different places that those guys will be able to line up and cause mismatch problems, and even if they're not involved in the play, they've got to be accounted for. You can't not account for players like that. And when you have, and both of them will be on the field at the same time, and then you combine that with having Bijan Robinson as well,
right?
And then you pick a tight end, pick one and put them on, or two, and go with it. If I don't think that Sarkisian is going to force. I know that he likes to, a lot of long crossing routes, take the safety with you, open up space. Like, there's a lot that goes into that you got to have speed for, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those have to be the players that are making the plays.
Right.
So when you have this sort of talent underneath, and not that these guys aren't fast, not that they're not athletes, not that they can't get down the field, but when you talk about those intermediate routes, and we talked about this last week, when you're making those big, huge, long, sweeping crossing routes all the way across the field and taking defenders with you and creating space in that sort of underneath 10 to 12 yard window, that he will be able to utilize the athletes he has in that tight end room to take a pressure off of what's looking more and more like a Hudson Card-led offense, and to be able to use all of it. It's instead of forcing square pegs into round holes. Like if Joshua Moore can be that leading sort of receiver that we've seen him in the past. And again, we've talked about this. At times he disappeared, and that, I don't think any of that was on Joshua Moore. I think that was much more on the scheme and the play call and things like that. But he's shown that he can be the guy, but he's not going to have to be the guy every week.
No, you don't have to rely on him getting like 15 targets every week for this offense to move the ball.
Right.
Like that's not going to be the case.
Absolutely. So when you have, I just feel like that's why I can't wait to get to these games to see how Sark is going to utilize this abundance of talent that he has to run up the seam and to just sit around in that little window behind the linebackers and in front of the safeties with these big, huge tight ends, these athletes that they have. It's going to be so cool to watch. And I say that it's going to be cool to watch because I have a lot of optimism about this offense at this point, even with the question marks at quarterback and wide receiver. And we're going to get into this in a little bit too, but what we thought was going to be a huge question mark with the offensive line might not be as big of a question mark as we originally thought. So it's just, how are they going to use these athletes, right? What's going to come from this? Is it going to be square peg, round hole again? Or are we going to actually see, no, you do this well. You run that 10-yard dig route in really well and can shield the defender with your body, make a play. As long as Card can put it on the money, or Thompson, whoever it ends up being, then it's a first down. And how is that going to, who's going to be the guy to step up there, or the guys to sit up there in the tight end room? Because I'm not necessarily feeling like, outside of Whittington and Worthy, that, like you were saying, that these wide receivers are going to be the stars of this offense, even though that's the way that this offense is sort of set up to run.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, this is a really overly simplified comparison, but like I think about like the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and it's, obviously Mahomes is, different level, but like you think about what they do with Travis Kelce and what the role that he plays, and then you've got someone like Tyreek Hill. We start talking about like we're talking about one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL right now, and all those, not trying to say this is what this offense is going to do, but you think about someone like Xavier Worthy kind of playing that Tyreek Hill role potentially. If the profile and everything that we're hearing is similar, that's going to be the kind of similar profile where you've got someone that can take the top off the defense. That's enough of a threat that the defense has to take that into account. And then you've got someone like, Jared Wiley playing that not Tyreek Hill, the Travis Kelce role. And like, it's not all just bombs away. It's just, you just find those soft spots in the defense because you've got so many threats that can do different things. And to have a tight end that can just make plays, that's such a big body that can move and can catch, and like, and you've got multiple of them.
Right.
You've got multiple players that can fit that profile. Like, it is going to be fascinating to see. And like you said, if the ball can just get where it needs to get, there's enough playmakers, it seems like, within this offense that this team could, should score some points. But yeah, we'll get it. You got to protect the quarterback for that to happen. And what are we hearing about this offensive line? Let's get into that. I know you had mentioned that, what we heard from the practice report, but how are you feeling about this offensive line?
I'm feeling better now than I did before, despite the fact that some of these D linemen were basically deemed unblockable in some of these one-on-one drills. That's just how special the defensive, especially the interior defensive line, is going to be this year for Texas. But as a whole, as a unit, everything's starting to sort of fall into place. These guys are, you talk about Christian Jones, who has said he's not cross training at any other position. He spent all of his time at left tackle. And I learned yesterday that Christian Jones didn't know how to do a pass set until he got to the 40 acres. He was used to being down in a 4-point stance and firing off the ball. And they asked him to do a pass set, and he didn't know what that was when he got to campus. And then when you have Herb Hand, who, you know, we've talked about our displeasure, our dislike of what he's done or what he did on this campus, and or lack of, I should say, absolute lack of development of these offensive linemen. And when you hear Christian Jones talk about what the difference is, he just goes, well, Coach Flood is just approaching it in a different way, and it's clicking with me.
What do you
Not
know?
every offensive line coach is a great offensive line teacher.
Yeah.
And Coach Flood is a teacher, it seems. And the way that he gets that across, you know, you can be in a math class and have the same stuff taught to you in two different ways, not get it from the first teacher and absolutely understand it from the second teacher.
Right.
And I feel like that's what we're going to start to see with the development of some of these offensive linemen right now, especially ones that got the Herb Hand treatment over the past few years, is somebody's going to be teaching them in a way that is easier to understand, that is easier to translate to the field. If Christian Jones, which I've been critical of Jones on this show, and I sort of questioned whether or not he was the guy at left tackle, you know, within the last few weeks. And then to hear him directly say, oh, no, like, it's making more sense for me now, even though he's getting taught the same sort of thing, you know, low pad level, things like it's being taught in a different way right now. And if Christian Jones is unlocked at left tackle, all bets are off with the rest of this offensive line, because you have Okafor at left guard, Jake Majors at center, Junior Angalau at right guard, who's been cross training at center and other positions as well. Kerstetter at right tackle, which is where he needs to be, which he's an all conference right tackle,
Right.
if he's there all season long.
Right.
Like, those sort of things, I feel a little bit more comfortable now moving into the season with this offensive line. What are you feeling about this?
Yeah. If that's the case, which I believe it to be the case, because, and also with Flood, this is not the first that we've been hearing about a coach that's on campus that's starting to, like, the positive news about them, which, I mean, didn't we earlier in camp hear this about Andre Coleman with the wide receivers, who was already on campus with the last regime? And, you know, as well as, you know, it's just, it's interesting to me, without going too much off on a tangent. It's like, how are we just now hearing about how Andre Coleman's such a great wide receiver coach? It's almost like he wasn't able to coach the way that he wants to coach previously. But that's a different story. But no, so I'm very encouraged by the news. I mean, we saw what Flood did at Alabama. We've seen what he's done at previous stops. Like, that's very encouraging. And there's depth. And if that's the thing, like, you know, we talked about Kerry, we talked about, you know, there's still Tyler Johnson in this mix, and we'll see if it can start to click for him. There's this other, like, if the coaching and developing is actually starting to take hold, that's not it. The problem with this program over the years has never been, like, it hasn't been getting talent. It just hasn't been developing it. And that's what we're hearing. You know, we're seeing Sam Cosmi apparently having a great preseason in Washington.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, he was kind of he was a 3-star recruit, kind of a, you know, sleeper kind of thing. Like, nobody, you know, but he played really well at Texas and obviously got drafted. But think about if that guy actually was able to get properly developed during his time on campus. So it's never been, I don't know. I think we're so conditioned now to kind of be like, all right, don't worry about the depth, because they're just not going to develop while they're on campus. These guys that are, you know, the second the second team, if someone has to come in, we're just worried because they just haven't been developed. They haven't been coached properly. And it's encouraging to hear this news about not only the first team guys, we're starting to see that sort out. We're starting to see who that first five is going to be. But also knowing that the second team is going to be getting developed as well is just really encouraging. I think if this offensive line can exceed our, I don't even know what, I mean, kind of heading into this, what our expectations with the offensive line was going to be really. I think we kind of didn't really know what we were going to have.
Right.
But I think if this offensive line unit can exceed what the kind of general perception of it is going into this season, then I think we've already mentioned the weapons on offense. And the last piece of that puzzle is the quarterback. If the backs and receivers do what we're anticipating them to do and the offensive line exceeds expectations, all it takes is the quarterback protecting the ball and doing what's asked of them. And if they do that, I think this team can, I think, really have a successful season on the offensive side of the ball. So
I agree 100%. Let's go into that quarterback conversation now. And because you and I had differing opinions on the show last week about who the quarterback was going to be, I thought Casey Thompson would be the week 1 starter, and you were a little bit, your gut feeling was that Hudson Card would be the guy coming out. It is looking more like Hudson Card. Hudson Card's been taking a lot of the first team reps, although Casey Thompson did take some at the spring game, or did take some in the open practice, I should say. And I think Sarkisian is still playing that game, where he's not going to totally just name a guy yet as the starter, and is still going to give these quarterbacks time. But Casey Thompson was picked off in 7-on-7 drills. Again, Hudson Card took care of the ball. And if that offensive line can create a pocket for Card, the word the whole time has been, if there's a pocket and he can sit there and have time to make a decision, Hudson Card is going to put the ball where it needs to be put. And it just seems more and more now, like I'm even more leaning towards Card being the guy at this point, because it just seems like ball security is
crucial,
is more of a strength of his than Thompson's at this point, despite not having the on-field experience at this level. So, yeah, it's going to be super important. And like you were saying, it's with the way that the offensive line has been talked up and what the expectation is slowly moving toward.
Yeah.
Card certainly seems like a guy that could get the job done.
Yeah, I still feel pretty confident about Card being the guy. I kind of had my own cynical reasons earlier on about why I felt that Card would be the guy, just about like, oh, well, Sark's going to keep this battle open because he didn't want the more experienced backup to leave. If he gives the job to Card earlier on, he doesn't want Thompson to transfer out in the spring kind of thing. Or, you kind of, as a new coach, you almost kind of have a built-in excuse in a way if you're rolling with a freshman quarterback. It's kind of like, all right, well, be patient, let this develop. Where if you've got the older guy, there's a little bit more expectation. But as this is played out, the turnover thing is the big thing for me, like we discussed last week. Like that's, to me, especially in the Big 12. I mean, just in college football now in general, we talk about with the SEC even having high scoring offensive now, like you can't give away possessions. You just can't give them away. You can't sacrifice field position cheaply. And there's too many weapons on this offense to give the ball away cheaply. And we're consistently now, whether it's hearing in scrimmages, hearing in open practices, hearing these cases where Thompson's turning the ball over. And to me, I think that's the most important thing, especially for a new coach that wants to have this team settled in and start to progress throughout the season. And Louisiana is going to be a tough game. Mm-hmm. And you can't give away possessions cheaply. And I think the only thing though, I feel like at this point, if Sark is not happy with the offensive line, for whatever reason, if he feels like that the protection just won't be there, then maybe it is Thompson. Because if the concern with Card is that he panics a bit more, like if you know, I don't know, if he feels a little more confident with Thompson being able to handle pressure, and if that offensive line isn't up to what he wants it to be, then maybe Thompson's the starter. But I feel like just given everything that we're hearing, given everything that we're, just the factors that are there, I think it's Card.
And the point about having a freshman quarterback with a new head coach and a new scheme and sort of having that buffer there. Last season I was talking about wanting to see Hudson Card on the field. Like,
Yeah.
He's that highly touted of a player. And if he is that guy, it's not like, oh, well, it's just Joe Blow freshman coming in. No. This guy can play.
Out of a quarterback factory.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he can play. And whoever it's going to be, if you're turning the ball over in this offense, you won't be the guy for very long.
Right.
Because while there is sort of this first year buffer, if you will, Sarkisian wants to win immediately. He's not going to use that as an excuse.
No.
And if you're turning the ball over and you're giving away possessions, like you said, and you're not, especially because we've seen it before, we've seen it over the last however many years, where you watch the all 22 tape and you look at how the scheme is helping get guys open, except it's not. It wasn't. This offense, there will be windows for quarterbacks to find their players. And if you're seeing them on time and you can put the ball where it needs to be, the offense is going to be successful. I'm not saying that Hudson Card will never turn the ball over, will never throw behind a receiver, will never sail one over and it goes to the safety.
Every quarterback does.
It's going to happen. But what does that overall decision-making look like? And when the windows are there, are you hitting them? And by all accounts, it sounds like Card is having such a great camp that it is leaning more and more towards him being that guy. So
when do you think when do you think we get a starter named?
Tuesday of the week of the game.
I was going to say it has to be the week of because it's got to be game week prep has got to be, if it's whoever your guy is, has got to be running with the ones.
Yeah. I still don't think that we'll have a total decision on that all through next week. But I feel like, that Monday, Tuesday range, we'll get a confirmation of who that's going to be.
Yeah.
Early of game week. So basically not next week, but the beginning of the following week will be, in my opinion, when we'll hear who that guy will be. And I'm a little bit closer to you now on that guy being Hudson Card.
Yeah. I have a feeling next week we're going to be spending a lot of time discussing this quarterback battle and kind of what the offense will look like. Cause I think they are kind of two different type of players too. And I think that their ceilings are different and what they bring to the offense is a little different. So I think next week will be an interesting conversation, assuming Stark doesn't surprise us and name a starter before that. But like, who knows? That's what I think he even said. Like he'll know when he knows when he's ready. That's what but he's still letting it go a little bit. So.
And he also doesn't work on anybody else's schedule. He doesn't give a shit that, like, oh, well, you're going to name a starter. You're going to name a starter. He doesn't care. He's on his own schedule. He's going to do what's best for the team. And if that means it's waiting until Tuesday of game week to formally name a starter, that's what he's going to do. And he's not going to bow to the pressure. He's not going to. He doesn't care.
Kirk Bowles asking for, what are you going to name a starter, Sark? It's coming up. The game's coming up this week.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sure. All right. Now that you're asking, let me go ahead and.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kirk, since you asked, buddy, and those reporters got to ask that question. I get it, but again, like it's not going to change anything. He's not going to bow to that pressure, and I do think it'll be the beginning of game week that we'll know for sure. Or it won't be in before then, I should say.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Well, man, let's move on. Let's get into some Austin FC talk here. And mercifully, God, this is where, we're reaching the, non-positive sports experience stages with Austin FC this season. This is what started off. Well, okay, look, I'm happy that we have a team. Let's just get that right out. This is not like, it's better to have a team here and a club that we can follow and support than to not have one at all. It's better to have them, have one that's losing and going through the growing pains of a first season than not having one. But God, this is getting frustrating. We talked about this as a run of games. This is a run of matches for Austin FC to maybe start to try to turn this thing around a little bit. Salt Lake loss was, the FC Dallas match was an ugly loss. Salt Lake was an ugly loss. But then here was an opportunity back at home against a Vancouver team that was sitting right there at the bottom of the table along with Austin. This was an opportunity in front of the home crowd to try to jump Vancouver and get a little bit of momentum, for the next couple matches against Portland and then Dallas visiting Austin. And that's not what happened. What did you, I don't even know where to start with. Where do you want to start with this match? Do we want to talk the lineup? Do we want to talk about, where do you even want to start with this? Because I think there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
With that Vancouver match.
Let's talk about that starting 11 a little bit, because one of the things that I would like, and I've said this before, is Gallagher and Dominguez, Cecilio, and
let's get right into that. Let's get right into Dominguez here, because
so the Dominguez thing for me is weird because the talent's obviously there. Like he's a good player. He disappears for stretches of time for me that is unacceptable for a player with his expectations. If he's nicked up, that's another story. But it's been ongoing for a while. And I've actually talked about having Gallagher in that starting 11 over Cecilio for a while now. And Dominguez was subbed off after 30 minutes for Gallagher in this match. And again, whether he caught a knock or something like that is sort of up there. But I'm sort of wondering if Josh Wolf, if he's starting to figure out maybe there's just not a guaranteed spot for any of these guys in the starting 11 anymore, or there shouldn't be anyway for some.
Yeah. I think now Wolf did mention after the match, I think the following day press conference, that there was an illness issue with Dominguez, that he even mentioned before the game, said he wasn't feeling well, kind of thing. But this for me comes back on Josh Wolf. If Dominguez was ill and he's been talking about rotating the lineup to try to keep guys fresh and all those kinds of things, then why do you start him? Why is he in the starting 11? And then his play showed that something was wrong. His touches were he was turning the ball over, he was not there at all. And okay, great. Wolf pulled him out after 30 minutes. But why even start him? If you knew that going in, why even start him? And so that's a frustrating aspect for me. Even when Gallagher came on, I did not like the formation and the tactics they were going with. I think, Driussi, he's a guy that, the results aren't quite there yet, but he's a hard worker. You see him running his ass off everywhere, all over the pitch.
Yep.
But he's a super talented player, but he's being played out of position right now. He is not a striker.
Right.
He's an attacking midfielder. He should be playing that kind of withdrawn number 10 role to create and kind of provide support for a striker. If you're going to bring Gallagher on at 30 minutes, stick him at the middle at the 9, which is what they ended up doing later.
Right.
But why do that at 30 minutes? Start it that way, because this system is not working with the way that, and we've talked about this, going back there, they just continue to cross balls into the box. There's nobody there. Teams now know that they can just set up shop, force Austin to the outside, because there's going to be no end product. Austin's most success, the corner that ended up leading up to the goal, was play through the middle. That ended up being a corner. Ring scores off the corner. I think it's the first goal off a corner this season for Austin. But that's what's just really frustrating for me. I'd be really curious to see what the lineup looks like tonight against Portland, because for me, drop Dominguez. He's got to get a rest. Yep. Whatever is going on, like he should not. I wouldn't even have him on the bench tonight, honestly. Just leave him out of the lineup. But I'd start Gallagher up top. I think having Driussi behind him in the 10 and kind of that support role. I think Pereira and Ring were fine in the midfield.
Agreed.
And I wouldn't change really. I mean, we'll get to the defense in a minute, but like, I think Pochettino and Fagundes on those wings I think that's sufficient. I know you were critical of Pochettino. I actually thought he played, I feel like I'm seeing the light come on with him. He's being a little bit more adventurous. You can see the confidence. He's taking more shots. His dribbling's better. There's just not the end product with him. And I think that's what's frustrating, is like, there was that turnover there where Driussi got it out to him, and he had Gallagher coming up the left side and could have played it over to him to have a one-on-one with the keeper, but he took the shot. He was close, but that's where it felt like the light came on for him in the Houston match. Then he gets benched for Dallas after winning MLS Player of the Week. But I know you've been critical of Pochettino. What are you thinking about him in this lineup at this point?
Well, I think you're right about the light coming on and about his overall play being elevated. I think as a whole, my frustrations with some of the midfielders, especially on the wings, is there's way too many they're giving the ball away way too easily at times where they shouldn't be giving the ball away, where you're taking away chances from being able to move forward, because passes that should be made, whether it's just out to the wing, simple passes out to the wing, or simple passes, these little they're forcing things instead of letting the game come to them, for me at least, a little bit too often. And that's what the frustrating part for Pochettino is for me. He's obviously his play has improved. I think you're right about the light sort of coming on for him, but on the whole, and coming out of the back as well, way too many giveaways after working way too hard to win the ball, and not allowing yourself to string passes together, to work your way up the middle, and to get those, those final, whether it's the finish, whether it's just putting pressure on that defense repeatedly, right, and wearing somebody down. It's not there because there's not enough link-up play. And I think that the specific one with Pochettino, I was at the point where I was like, again, like, we're giving the ball away again in that same spot. And that's sort of where my frustration was lying with him on that one. But you're right. I do think the lights come on for him, but there's just way too many giveaways in the midfield, in the middle third. So they can't even get to that attacking third to make something happen. That's really where my criticism lies.
Yeah. And also, if Mackenzie Gaines is healthy, which he is, he's off the injury report. If he is good enough to go, I wouldn't mind having Gallagher start on that left over Pochettino tonight, and having Gaines start up top as the number 9, and then still having Driussi as that creative mid. And obviously Fagundes isn't going to lose his spot on the right at this point, and he's earned that. That's where, we'd like to see some more Jared Stroud, but honestly, like, who, kind of where do you fit him in right now?
Yeah, that's fair. But also, though, at this point, do we trust Josh Wolf to make those sort of adjustments and sort of think outside the box with some of these lineup decisions? Because we talk a lot about square pegs and round holes. He hasn't shown the willingness to make those adjustments yet, either with his lineup going into the match or with his lineup with in-game adjustments. He's not, for me, up to this point, the stage has seemed a little bit too big for Josh Wolf.
Agreed.
Not that he can't get there. And again, you know, were the expectations for this team to make a run at the playoffs, a possible playoff spot? Was that should that have even been the case? I do feel like the talent on this team is there enough to be even a 7 or an 8 seed going into the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah.
Should this team be dead ass last in the conference? Absolutely not.
No.
And we're learning, and I think Josh Wolf is learning. I think he's trying to figure this. I'm not saying he's doing this on purpose. I think he's trying to figure this stuff out, but he's got to start to make some adjustments with this squad. Whether it's the lineup going into the match, or whether it's moving these guys around, not just making straight 1-for-1 subs in these lineups and just getting fresh legs on. Move these guys around, you know. And when Stroud, we talk about Stroud because Stroud has showed early on his ability to just run, get some crosses in, get some big crosses in, and make things happen. I just want to see, like Driussi, like you said, has the quality totally been there yet? No. Has he just run his ass off the entire time he's on the pitch? Absolutely. Give me more of that, putting pressure on a defense, putting pressure on those wings, on the, you know, that making them run up and down the pitch and tiring them out. So when you get to the 75th minute and you've got to score a goal to get back into the game, you've got guys on there that can do it. And the other side that you're playing might be a little bit more worn down. Wolf hasn't put that pressure. He has not applied pressure from the managerial role like an experienced manager would, and it's just showing. His lack of experience is showing right now for me.
And that's what we can start the matches that he's been completely outmaneuvered by the opposing manager. The list is starting to stack up. Vancouver made the adjustments at half. That's what did it. You know, the Dallas match, adjustments at half. That's what did it. And it's even going back earlier in the season, it's just he's getting outmaneuvered by managers making adjustments. And that's what I mean. Like, we could go on, like we got a whole list of things that we can get into from this Vancouver match, but like, why isn't Danny Pereira playing more forward? One of the best dribblers and ball possession players on the team that can actually drive forward into the box and unlock the defense a little bit. Why is he playing so further back? And like, he does a good job there, but like, that is not, Danny Pereira needs to be playing more forward.
That's not why you took him number 1 overall in the draft, to play defensive midfield.
No,
like
Ring is good enough to manage a lot of those duties in the defensive midfield. And we've got a lot of players, you know, that are great tracking back and they run back and assist, like help out with that. So why isn't Danny Pereira playing? That's why I think about him, like, if I'm the manager, which I'm obviously not, but you've got guys like Driussi and Pereira that can actually drive the attack into the box. They can dribble, they can beat defenders one-on-one. And when you're desperate for goals and you've got players on your wings that run their asses off the way that they do, with Fagundes and Stroud and these different guys that can get on a run and you can unlock a ball through to them. Why aren't we seeing that? And that's where it's like there's a complete disconnect between the profile of players that are on the pitch and what strategy he's trying to implement. It just doesn't match.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, I don't know. It's confusing to me, but I guess, it's
along those same lines though. Gallagher is a guy that his teammates have openly discussed the fact that when he's in the box, with the way that he takes up space and pulls defenders away.
Right.
Gallagher has been a guy that has been the reason that some of these goals have scored, even though he hasn't, he missed he probably should have scored late on that header, late in the Vancouver match, but just his presence alone, his speed, his sort of jitterbug like play that distracts the defenders. More of that up front to free up the guys that are coming in. You know, that ring header off the corner, that seems to be his bread and butter, because that's a couple times now that he's been, 10 yards out and uses those neck muscles and puts it into the corner. And it's like, when you have guys running around in the box to distract people, it's not just Fagundes sitting in the box and crossing it into him when you've got three guys that are all 6 inches taller than he is. You've got to be able to move around, take up space, pull guys off, and it's the exact opposite when you talk about the defense for Austin FC. When you've got 3 defenders there and one attacker, and that attacker is somehow getting to the ball and making things happen for the other side. When in Austin FC, it's the exact opposite. They're being defended well because like you said earlier, teams know what the game plan is.
Yeah.
And it seems like Austin FC hasn't necessarily unlocked that figuring out what the other team is doing and what they do well. And that's
Right.
For me, the most frustrating takeaway is they're not utilizing the players to the best of their ability in terms of attacking players, and the defenders aren't necessarily taking away what these attacking teams do best.
Right.
That is a recipe for an absolute disaster. And that's what we've been seeing so far, especially in this really, really poor run that they've been on.
Yeah. And, Musa Jite is with the squad now. He's training, all those kinds of things. I know there's a lot of hope being pinned on him, but
no pressure.
But like, you watch his highlight videos, everything he was doing in France, all those kinds of things, the type of player he is.
Yep.
But is he coming into a system that's not even gonna, like, there's all this hope for him to like unlock the offense. But is he even gonna be like, is the attack or the tactics, does that even match what his strengths are, which is speed, getting the ball on his foot and finishing? He's not, or is it just going to be continue crossing balls into the box and just hope that he can get his head on one? Like, because that's not the kind of player, at least from what I've seen, the kind of profile of player that he is. And it's like, is Wolf just going to completely change the tactics now because Jite's there? And it's kind of like, I don't know if he will, although he probably should.
He definitely should.
And
but again, we'll see. Do we trust him to do that? Not right now.
Right. And so that's it's frustrating when you have a goalkeeper playing as well as Stuver has all season. And I don't think the defense has been absolutely terrible. There's been moments, but like, I think they've done a decent enough job in open play doing, with defending. I think I'm back on the Nick Lima shouldn't start or play train after. He was aggressive. He was, seemed passionate and was fired up the other night. He was, seemed to be playing with some heart, but the winning goal for Vancouver on that counter, him just half-assing to get back, and it just was. Komanic has been such a bright spot on that left side, and it's amazing how just absolutely crucial he's become. But like, you think about it, okay, so if everybody's healthy and you've got Komanic, Beasler, and God, I guess Cascante or Romagna. I'm a fan of Romagna, but Cascante's had his moments. I'm kind of still on I think we now know who Cascante really is, kind of, so I wouldn't mind Romagna starting back there, or maybe Freddie Kleeman, who looked good when we saw him in some action. And that's where I'm kind of wondering where some of these guys are, like back on that back line that have put in some good shifts with, Kleeman, another high draft pick that's looked well, and Aiden Stanley, who we saw get a little bit of time that looked really good. And I think Jimenez has been solid, but like, I think the defense as a whole has been okay. It's just, if this offense was scoring more, and you mentioned the Gallagher miss, I think that those kind of misses stand out so much because there's no other chances that are happening.
Right. Oh yeah. When you only have 4 or 5 legitimate chances a match, and one of them is a header from 6 yards that sails over the crossbar, it absolutely stands out more than if you're constantly attacking and constantly getting peppering the goalkeeper, making the keeper work. The
Right.
keeper, when you're not making a goalkeeper work at all, it's the exact opposite of what we see out of Brad Stuber, who's having to bust his ass, even though it's not necessarily all on the defense there, but he's having to make plays, and sides that are playing Austin FC are figuring out, no, let's just go. Let's just pepper, because sooner or later, it's
It's
gonna
going to
break
open up.
down.
Exactly.
Something's gonna happen. And that's what you would hope to see out of Austin FC is pressure. And then sooner or later, you're going to be rewarded. And whether or not, the Gallagher miss, if he heads that down into the ground, we're having a different conversation today, I think.
Well, but
If he's
honestly,
able to put that in,
looking at
but
the stats from that match, if Gallagher puts that one in, I think Austin kind of earns an undeserved point. Because
yep,
looking at the stats, I mean, Austin had over 62% possession. Okay, great. But Vancouver outshot Austin 19-10. The shots on goal were 8-2 in favor of Vancouver. Austin had they had nearly 500 total passes where Vancouver was under 300. That's not direct.
no,
It doesn't matter how much possession you have, and it doesn't matter how many passes you can string together if you're not putting any finishing product on it. Vancouver had 10-4 advantage in corners. It's
there
just
was 6.
the numbers tell the story here.
I think Vancouver had 6 corners in the first 30 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Like it was something absurd like that, where it's just corner. It's like, that's the sort of, and even if you're not getting a ton out of it, that's what you need. You got to put that pressure on, put those defenders and midfielders, put everybody coming back into a stressful situation.
Right.
And do it over and over again. And that's what teams are doing against Austin FC. That's why teams are finding success against Austin FC, because they're doing that. Austin FC is not.
Right.
Well, we'll find a way to make those adjustments. If Austin FC is going to get out of the cellar, he's going to have to, because if he doesn't, then this is going to be a very frustrating finish to this season. And
well, that's the thing. There's plenty of time. This is only, we're just getting past the halfway mark. There's plenty of time to right this ship.
Absolutely.
But what we've seen so far in terms of willingness to adjust, willingness to adapt, there's no firm proof of example of that. And that's what I think is discouraging. If we were seeing some okay, we're going to try some different tactics, things look a little bit different. You kind of go, okay, well, there's some experimentation. Maybe, we're at least something's going to click. He's going to figure this out, but it's just been, kind of stubborn. So it's frustrating, but hey, there's another chance tonight, and it's against a team that the last time they were in Austin hung 4 on them. And it's, we'll kind of see how this one goes. Portland's kind of in a different position than they were the last time they were in Austin. So, but hey, it's a good opportunity to get back on the right track and try to get something going. So
absolutely.
Well, man, let's wrap this thing up. We got the breakfast wrap here. Let's we've been kind of keeping with this theme of following what the running horns that have headed to the NBA. Last week we talked about Jericho Sims and Kai Jones really getting some love and really standing out in the summer league. This week it's Greg Brown's turn, and this is a guy that we've been talking about, kind of some, ad nauseum about what did and didn't go right with him in his 1 year at Texas, and how was this going to play out with him going to Portland. I'm sure if you asked him, he was drafted a lot lower than he would have expected before going to Texas, but man, he's kind of making some noise this summer with the Trailblazers. What are you making of Greg Brown's summer so far?
Well, I'm making a lot out of it, seeing that he's throwing down between the leg dunks in games. It's like all of the athleticism that is jumping off the page with these horns in summer league right now. It's just all the more frustrating to know that they were all on campus at the same time, and that it wasn't taken advantage of. I was very critical of Greg Brown. I was very I was very open about the fact that I don't know that I would have spent an early draft pick on the guy, because it appeared to be an effort thing for a while there. Even though the talent never went away, that ability just doesn't disappear like that.
Right.
But I didn't see the want to. And then when you're only playing 6 minutes a game at the end of the season or whatever it is, and now we find out, and I think we sort of knew, but the most frustrating thing about Shaka Smart is not unlocking all three of these ultra athletic, super talented guys and finding a way to not lose to Abilene Christian in the first round of an NCAA tournament. So I want to personally tell Greg Brown, Greg, if you're watching, I want to apologize for doubting you. You look like you're having a lot of fun on that Portland Summer League team. And I hope it continues, because if it does, Portland's going to have themselves an absolute steal with this second round pick that they got, man. Well, I know you saw, we've been talking about Brown in the group chat, and we've been sort of marveling again at watching what he does, which is what we expected him to do on the 40 acres. So how are you feeling after seeing Greg Brown do a between the legs dunk in a game and jump out of the gym like the rest of these running horns are doing in summer league ball?
Oh man, I'm really happy for him, and I think he's going to be fine. I think my kind of feeling, as we've talked about over this summer, leading up to the draft and all those things, about kind of like, I don't know. I have a feeling that there was more. I have a feeling, Brown was going to be fine. I think there was more going on campus that maybe wasn't down to him. And I've been fascinated to see what he was going to do with this opportunity and how he was going to develop. And it's like, it's so frustrating. And like, I know Shaka is not going to, for one, it's Texas. It's not a basketball school traditionally. And like, it's not going to get the same kind of attention and the same kind of like heat, but man, he fully deserves to be in that conversation with the Charlie Strongs and Tom Hermans.
100%.
Absolutely does. In terms of like, just, I know he recruited well, and there were some fun games and all that kind of stuff. And like, but it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal to have that roster. And that's what just now we were talking about, those three. With those three alone, and then a bunch of, jokers on the rest of the squad, you should beat Abilene Christian. We're not even talking about the Matt Colemans, the Andrew Joneses, all the different players, the rest of that roster, Ramey, just on and on, that didn't beat Abilene Christian. It's criminal.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just, wish him the best at Marquette. But good riddance, man.
Or not, whatever.
Good riddance. Like,
again,
talk about just dumping all over. Like,
yeah, nobody ever said anything bad about the person Shaka Smart, but the basketball coach Shaka Smart has left a little bit to be desired. And I'm starting to think that it's not just, has the 40 acres, has Belmont been a mess? Yep. But I'm starting to feel like with some of these coaches, that's not an excuse that we can just look back on and point at. These
Belmont did lose that game against Abilene Christian.
These were coaches that were not ready. They might have lost it because of the hire that they made, but not because of, you know what I mean? Like that's the sort of thing that's where I point at Belmont, is the hires that have been made on this campus before Chris Del Conte arrived were questionable, to say the least. And now we're going to see when Chris Del Conte is all the rest of these secondary, tertiary sports that have had these new hires under Chris Del Conte have already shown success. Now the ones that quote unquote matter, not that these other sports aren't important, but when you talk about the
money makers,
right?
The money makers, yeah.
Especially football now, and then with Chris Beard coming in basketball, like, are there questions about Chris Beard's ability to string together an offense? Yeah, but are they gonna? It's just going to be a different. It's not going to be like Shaka Smart struggling to string together an offense. It's not going to look the same.
Do you trust Chris Beard to be able to find a way to beat Abilene Christian in the first round of the tournament?
Yeah. Yes.
Honestly,
I do. Yes, absolutely. We've seen Chris Beard have tournament success at a Power 5 school.
Right.
Not just some Cinderella run where you get there and, you know, like, because Shaka Smart obviously had his runs had that one run.
That's it.
In
the rest of his results have just not. That's why I just don't think he's that good of a coach.
Well, and I think we're going to find out real quick. Not that I care, not that I'm going to follow Marquette basketball closely, but we're going to see the type of basketball coach Shaka Smart is with how he does it. A basketball school,
which is what he said. He's so glad to be somewhere where they appreciate basketball now.
Well, they're not going to appreciate him if he lays an egg. Like, obviously, you know, we were really high coming out of that Big 12 tournament, right? And then it's just like that. He made a run. That's the second run that he made as a head coach, was that run to win the Big 12 postseason tournament. And then what did he do? He showed you who he was. If somebody shows you who they are once, believe them. If they show you who they are twice and you don't believe them still, that's on you. He's shown who he is. So we'll see how he does at Marquette, but I do trust Chris Beard to beat Abilene Christian in the first round of an NCAA tournament. Absolutely.
I think I trust him to find a way.
I do too.
Yeah. I know that's a tall order. Like, I know that's a lot to ask out of a basketball coach at the University of Texas with one of the best rosters in the country, with 3 guys that were drafted. Like, what would Chris Beard have? Oh, God, we can.
Yeah, let's not.
What would he have done with that roster last season?
A lot more.
Exactly.
A lot more. And
exactly.
You would have seen it, and it wouldn't have been, because we questioned Shaka Smart throughout the entire season. They went on that really, really nice run in the Big 12 tournament and looked good. A couple bounces went their way, but they found a way to get a win night after night in that tournament. But then, with how long to prepare for Abilene Christian, and that's the egg you lay, you showed me who you are again. So I don't think, Chris Beard has shown that consistency at a higher level, more consistently, with not as talented players on a roster, I would venture to say. And that's why I feel like, you know, is he going to win the Big 12 coming out year one? I'm not setting that expectation for him, but that's not what this is about.
He's got to get enough roster to do it.
He does, but it's about getting to the big tournament, to the big dance, and making a run there. That's where, and Chris Beard has shown that his style, his willingness to make adjustments have gotten him deep into NCAA tournaments. And that's why you're here. It's not just to win Big 12 titles. Those banners are great, whatever. It's to win national championships. And that's why you hire Chris Beard, not to win the Big 12.
It's to get to Final Fours.
National championship. It's to get the Final Fours and to win national titles. And is he the guy to do that at Texas? We're going to find out. But he's shown at least that he has the ability to do it consistently, and he isn't too proud to get out of his own way sometimes. And that's what I think is going to be the difference between Shaka Smart and Chris Beard. So,
well,
yeah, man.
That's what to tie back up with Greg Brown. Like, I think that's what, these things always kind of have a way of revealing themselves over time. And it's, the question, well, what happened with this Texas team last season? And I think, given what we're seeing in the summer league. And I think also, again, not to forget about the guys that were, that didn't go to the NBA this year. I think we're going to see it this coming season with guys that are still on campus. We're going to be saying some of the same stuff about them, like we're saying with Greg Brown and Kai and Jericho and those guys about like, where was this? Where was this before? And I think it's all going to kind of reveal itself as things naturally tend to do. And you go, oh, well, I guess it was the coaching. Maybe it wasn't unfair to nudge him out the door to a landing spot at Marquette,
I can't wait to see what Courtney Ramey looks like under Chris Beard.
See, that's exactly who I was thinking of. Is like, I have a feeling he's going to be the guy that's going to go like, we're going to say, where was this? Why didn't we see more of this?
Uber talented guy, obviously, but a little bit out of control, unhinged play, even if you will, at times. And if you can totally unlock Courtney Ramey's potential, which is he's already shown to be a really good player.
Yeah.
You can unlock that, and he's going to be surrounded by what we have called a collegiate all-star team. With
no pressure.
With who Chris Beard has attracted through the transfer portal. Yeah, right. No pressure, but we're going to see it right off the bat. And I think I'm excited for basketball. I haven't been this excited for a basketball season since last year when Mike hyped us up.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
God, you just ruined my March, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. But, again, this is we're going to see a different type of program altogether under Chris Beard. And again, props to Greg Brown for getting to summer league and not having his dauber down about being a second round pick and going in there and showing like, oh shit, like this is why this guy was a top 5 prospect coming out of high school. Probably could have played on that G League Ignite team and done well for himself, made some money. Does he regret that decision? We may never know. But I think that we're going to see Greg Brown have a successful NBA career.
If he does what he's capable of doing, he'll be just fine. The money will be there. He'll be just fine. And that's what good for him and good for Portland taking a chance on him there. And
absolutely.
That's starting to look like quite a steal of a pick. So
for sure, man.
Oh man. Well, man, I think we got it wrapped up for today.
Yep.
Anything else you want to hit on, or let's start our preview show prep for next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sticking around and listening, guys. Make sure to tune in next week for the preview show. We're going to have Longhorn insider Mike Holland on to help us break down this roster, break down this schedule, have a little bit of insight into the college football scene as a whole. And we're working on some side projects too, that maybe we might be able to add a little bit to this show. So we'll see if that starts to pan out. And looking forward to that preview show next week, man.
Oh yeah. It's going to be a fun one. I think there'll be some laughs and some fun to be had on next week's show, as well as the predictions. My favorite part of the preview show. So get it on tape. We'll call your shot. So
exactly.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. And we'll see you again next week.
See ya. Hook up.
See ya.
ATX represent. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on the